When the war first began, I needed an army, one ruthless enough to overthrow a planet. With the rise of the Autobots, my army had to become much more. A ruthless file machine capable of winning at any cost. The goal was to defeat the Autobots no matter what, and once the Autobots were defeated, I would kill the very creature I created to wipe out my enemies in the first place. Once the Decepticons were remolded, recreated into what I originally intended them to be, then, and only then, would our reign begin. No infighting, no dissent, nothing but perfectly controlled peace through unparalleled strength.
Are you doing the Fortnite emote?
The Decepticon Legion has always been about power and domination, no matter the iteration of the faction you look at. The bread and butter of the Decepticon ranks stem from peace through tyranny and the will to rule over all. However, I received a comment the other day that opened my eyes to the flaws in the Decepticon philosophy. I like Megatron's hypocrisy at the end there, for as much as he prattles on about strength and weakness, how failure is the greatest crime, there he was frozen at the mercy of weaker life forms. He only survived due to the loyalty of his subordinates, only succeeded by their help. It just shows how flawed the Decepticon philosophy is. When Optimus tells him he'll never build an empire, he's right, because Megatron will inevitably destroy everything he builds. For today's video, we're explicitly going to use the DS interpretation of Megatron, since that's the one that's been blowing up my channel lately, and get into his philosophy as a commander of the Decepticon Legion, as well as his personal morals and things like that. I'm also going to use a little bit from the IDW comics as well, so if you are a reader of the IDW Transformers comics, there's a little bit for you here as well. So the whole prospect of the Decepticon philosophy, as I've mentioned, is peace through tyranny. Break those beneath you and bend their lives to further yours. The weak only serve to benefit the strong, and only the strongest survive. Now before we pick this apart, let's look at how Megatron's mantra reigns true here. In this specific story we're looking at, he jettisoned himself into space searching for the Allspark to become the ultimate being, the most powerful force in the universe, able to rule the Decepticon Empire over all. He ultimately crash-landed on Earth, where he was at the mercy of human beings after being discovered by Archibald Witwicky. He was sent to be investigated by Sector 7, who had him frozen enough to keep him in cryostasis and keep him at bay so he didn't break out and reactivate. Now despite being at the mercy of humans, he was lying in wait for his time to strike the whole time. Now in the game, Megatron's fate is ultimately decided by the humans as they move in tanks and other military forces to come and destroy the Decepticon leader, or former Decepticon leader, as Starscream has assumed command in this canon. If the Decepticons had not intervened, Megatron would not have survived the humans' assault, and his empire would be left at the mercy of Starscream, with no one to stop him ruling over all. Megatron's loyalists, Barricade, Blackout, the Rookie, and Brawl were the reasons that he survived. Later on in the game, when the Rookie is at the mercy of Megatron, watching the Decepticon commander as he looms over him, clutching the Allspark, the almighty Cybertronian source of power, Megatron tells him something that contradicts his entire mantra, philosophy, and way of thinking.
If they were truly Decepticons, they would have survived. Weakness is a rust that must be stripped away. Just like you.
This is a line referring to the Decepticon loyalists that fell at the hands of the humans, the Decepticons that fell fighting for Megatron's ultimate return to power. However, he himself would have died if not for them. Without his loyalists, he would have become the weakness that he himself is dead set to eradicate from existence. He's told by the Rookie that he helped save Megatron, to which he responds by saying that while that's true, he's heavily damaged. Repairing him would be a waste of resources, and that's the gaping hole in his philosophy, the fact that he requires soldiers to be the best of the best, strongest of the strong. However, even when they are, he wipes them out regardless because his philosophy is so unbalanced and inherently unfair. He's bent it to fit his own narrative, and ultimately just to serve himself, not the Decepticons as a whole. The Decepticons clearly showed that they were fit to call themselves Decepticons, as Barricade said in his dying words. However, in Megatron's eyes, that wasn't the case. There was another comment I received regarding Megatron's betrayal that I thought was important to bring up here too. I think the best part about Megatron's betrayal of your team at the end of the game is that at that point he has a magical cube that, in the film, lets Frenzy's severed head shit out a new body, can fold itself from the size of a warehouse to the size of a FedEx package, and give life to any random electronic object. He has all the resources in the universe and still calls fixing his most loyal subjects a waste. It makes the line hit extra hard and solidifies that Barricade either thought he had Megatron figured out or gave him a bit of depth as having some kind of inferiority complex that serving Megatron stoked into suicidal zeal. Barricade lived and died by the Decepticon code, believing he knew how Megatron worked and that he knew everything he needed to know about their commander. Megatron warped the Decepticon code to fit his own personal narrative, and therefore in technicality was not a true Decepticon himself. He abandoned his army, his men, and everything they stood for in the name of the Decepticon Legion to obtain as much power for himself as possible. He was no different from Starscream in the end, making everything you and the fellow loyalists fought for completely redundant. All of your fighting was for nothing, because at the end of the day, you were always going to end up with the same result. You didn't know that the entire time you'd been fighting against a mirror image of the master you fought so valiantly to save. In terms of Starscream's treacherous ways, Megatron has this to say to him in the All Hail Megatron comic book.
One day, you will lead the Decepticon armies. You will rule over them as you've always wanted, and will have done so by crushing me beneath your heel. The right to lead is one that cannot be given. It must be taken, and this is something I see before you.
After this, he tells him that his time will come, but today, Starscream and the Decepticon Legion belongs to him. Starscream is Megatron's property as of right now, and he should continue to serve him as such. Obviously, this is a different interpretation to the Megatron we know from the DS game, but it's still an insight into the Decepticon way, and how Megatron himself believes that leadership over the Decepticon Empire should be taken, not given. When Megatron is too old, too weak to lead, it is part of the Decepticon code to replace him. Weaknesses are rust that must be stripped away, using Megatron's own words. When Megatron eventually becomes part of that rust, he believes Starscream will overthrow him, tossing him into obscurity and replacing him as leader of the faction. This philosophy stands true over most Transformers media, and in part it still lives and breathes here in this game. The difference in this game though, is that this version of Megatron is just a total hypocrite. He himself doesn't actually follow the Decepticon code, and his enemies know this. As the aforementioned comment states, Optimus Prime tells Megatron during their final encounter in the game that Megatron will never build an empire. Megatron will never rule over everyone as he wishes, because he can't help but destroy everything he touches. Prime's right, and even though he ultimately dies by Megatron's hand, and Megatron goes on to become the ultimate lifeform wielding the Allspark, Prime was still always right about him, and his words will haunt him until his final days. Hell, if the Allspark does make him invulnerable, it dooms Megatron to a life of loneliness and emptiness, as once he's eradicated the universe and everything in it, he'll be left with nothing other than himself and his power, with no one to exact his rage upon, no one to worship him, and no one to feed his narcissistic ego, ultimately dooming him to living hell, with the only escape being to forfeit the power he fought so valiantly to obtain. And that's just not something that I see this version of Megatron doing. When you look at things from that lens, it really makes you question whether or not this interpretation of Megatron, by not following the ancient Decepticon philosophy that he himself established in the IDW comics, has actually won here. He's killed absolutely everyone, and plans on killing everyone else he comes across. He'll never build an empire, he'll never lead the Decepticons because he either just kills them all or sends them to their deaths, and he'll sure as hell never be the ultimate warlord he wants to be. A Decepticon warrior that follows the code almost to the letter is Thundercracker. I'm specifically talking about his arc in the All Hail Megatron comic series, as he discovers Megatron is experimenting and dissecting his own kind to further the Decepticon cause and ultimately spread their forces across the galaxy. Throughout this story, he's constantly up in arms with his fellow Seeker Skywarp over whether or not Megatron is remaining true to the Decepticon way, or if he's losing himself in the quest for power. Thundercracker is also responsible for stopping the Decepticons from dropping a nuke in New York City. He firmly believes that Megatron has lost his way, veering too far from the Decepticon code, taking matters into his own hands to stop the Decepticons annihilating the defenseless city. He preaches that the Decepticons are forged through combat, not slaughter, and proceeds to take it upon himself to launch the nuclear bomb into space, betraying Megatron's wish. Now, I'll talk over Thundercracker in the All Hail Megatron comic book some other time, but I thought his inclusion in this video was important since he played a big part in questioning the Decepticon commander's decisions to stray from the Decepticon code. So with all of that said, I think I've more or less covered the basis of the Decepticon way and the Decepticon philosophy. If you did enjoy this kind of video, please let me know in the comments and I'll do more shorter videos like this in the future, where I talk over lore and things like that in either the Transformers universe or any other universe you like, preferably Star Wars, since that's the only other big franchise I know anything about. Apologies for the slow release of videos at the moment. Like I've said before in previous videos, right now at the current time of recording, I'm in my final year of university and I'm right at the end of my course, so getting videos out really frequently is just not an option. I don't really have the time, I'm constantly working, and it's just, it's a shame. It really sucks. I don't enjoy this at all, and I can't wait until I can actually pump stuff out on the regular. Another thing to note is that LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is coming out pretty soon, and I'll probably be live streaming it the day it releases, so make sure you're here for that. Anyways, like I said, that's the end of today's video, so I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one.